Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. American Coin and Currency, democratizing real estate ownership through tokenization inside Xcavate protocol. Today we are here with 𝗫𝗄𝗺𝗁𝘁𝗄𝗵. How's it going?
Really good, thank you. Cheers, Dustin, for having me on. And it's been a long time that we haven't seen each other. Was it 2 years ago we met in Singapore?
We met in San Francisco, actually.
Oh, sorry, you're absolutely right. Yeah. I had the pleasure of being at UC Berkeley for five weeks. That was amazing.
Yeah, you were there the whole time.
Wow. Yeah, it was like probably one of the best experiences of my life. It was it was brilliant.
Yeah, we'll touch into you're a winner essentially, I believe, or at least definitely selected choices for projects I've seen for sure. So yeah, a little bit. Let's get an intro. My name is Dustin Lee, host of American Coin and Currency, head of social media, and big in the RWAs. Helped co-found D-Store Digital Assets. Been sold or bought the first opal, digitized opal in the metaverse and Discovery Channel in 2022. So it's a long time coming in the RWA space, and a huge fan of Polkadot. So we're going to dive into that as well. I'll give an introduction to Richard, visionary technology leader with deep experience in digital transformation, enterprise systems, blockchain infrastructure, has delivered hundreds of enterprise level websites, applications, spent 9 years in multidisciplinary operational management at Coca-Cola, graduated Polkadot Blockchain Academy, UC Berkeley 2023, CTO, co-founder, Xcavate Protocol, Richard leads development, Xcavate 2.0, individual empowerment layer, decentralized identity, anchored ecosystem designed to support human needs across Maslow's hierarchy, from security belonging to esteem and self-actualization. His work integrates digital identity, real-world assets, and governance to democratize access to real estate investments. Richard's passionate about psychology, history, geopolitics, sports, and a lifelong Arsenal FC supporter. Got it.
I have to get that one in.
Yeah, there's a lot. But yeah, you have a huge, rich history of deep connections with technology, and especially with Polkadot. I see that as like a huge plus for me, for anyone that's still building, at this stage. But let's get into some of your history. Like, what was kind of like your, reasoning to get into technology? Like, what was the sentiment for yourself to get into?
So going back a bit, I originally was a mechanical engineer. That's my sort of background in Coca-Cola.
Okay.
I went through many different sort of roles at Coca-Cola. That was the beauty of working for such a big organization, is that the opportunities were pretty rich and fast coming if you sort them out. And I worked in firstly on the production lines, and then there was an opportunity to be a programmer in the process room. So when they planned batch creations like Coca-Cola, Sprite, Dr. Pepper, all these different things, it was quite a manual process. So we sort of automated some things, and then we sort of optimized various elements through software. So started with that, left there after 9 years. I started a couple of Web2 businesses. I worked built some stuff for ITV. They're a big media company in the UK. Lots of smaller to medium-sized businesses. And then one of my Web2 clients bought some Bitcoin, some Ethereum, XRP. Didn't really understand what it was all about. That was 2015. Looked at the technology, but didn't really touch it until 2018, 2019. I guess it wasn't quite the when COVID hit, but that's when it sort of exploded for me, because it gave me a lot of time to explore this kind of stuff. And I was more interested in the technology rather than the sort of speculative asset, unfortunately. So yeah, I took a big deep dive into looking at, you know, Ethereum. That led me to Dr. 𝗲𝗵𝗃𝗏, who's the co-founder of Ethereum, created the Solidity smart contract language. And then understanding what he was building with Polkadot. It was very early days at that time. This idea of sort of multi-chain interoperability, scalability, both, you know, horizontally and vertically. We know that, you know, Ethereum has become this huge monolith, but, you know, it's still, it's a bit like a sort of a Frankenstein monster. You know, it's been manipulated over time, but something that Dr. 𝗲𝗵𝗃𝗏 engineered and architected was something that was built for this scalability out of the box. So it just followed the project. Lucky enough to be able to get accepted onto the Polkadot Blockchain Academy 2023, UC Berkeley. Went there, met a couple of the other guys from our project that we work with now, because there were two tracks. I was on the founder track. There was a dev track, but we were sort of in lots of the modular framework classes together, and then there were a few you span off and did a few things separately, but it was like 15-hour, 16-hour days. It was crazy, but it was really enjoyable. And I mean, you came out of it buzzing and really, really eager to start building. So yeah, it was a fantastic experience, and it's put me in good stead with the project now. So it's yeah, it's been amazing. Really, really pleased with the progress we've developed so far, but we'll go into that in a moment. But yeah, it's been quite a journey from, you know, both personally and from the project standpoint. But I think coming at it from a slightly different, you know, I wasn't software through and through. I sort of graduated into software. I'm a little bit older than most graduates of Polkadot Blockchain Academy, but I think I've got that real world experience, which has put us in good stead as well. And then I met my co-founder probably just before the Polkadot Blockchain Academy. I've known him quite a few years now. Alex Ward. He's real estate through and through, very real world. It's not like he doesn't understand technology. It's just a question. He's not a coder or he doesn't understand how it works. He just understands that it works. And what is great is we've taken as a team his experience within, you know, 23 odd years of real estate, understanding the nuances of not all real estate is the same. We, you know, understand that both geographically, regionally, but also about the types of real estate. So build something that allows developers to tokenize their own assets, but also to verify and validate that before it gets tokenized was a fundamental difference that we've built into our protocol compared to a lot of other types of projects out there.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I wanted to get into Xcavate, of course, but I wanted to start on, like, you know, what is RWA to you, like, when it comes to like tokenizing assets? I know it's just kind of thrown out around, you know, that terminology, but now we're kind of like hammering down after several years on like what that means. So like, what is your take on tokenization RWAs?
Yeah, I think I don't dismiss the term RWAs, but for me, the whole point of Xcavate is about empowerment. And the real world, there are so many opportunities, but yet systems don't really empower the individual. A lot of the time it's controlled, or it's being controlled by someone else, or there's huge trust layers. So, you know, what we want to try and build to enable RWAs to be more tangible and more liquid. And when I say RWAs, you know, we're starting with real estate, but it could be, we've looked at golf courses, we've looked at hotels, gyms. You know, imagine, you know, you're owning your own bit of a restaurant or a gym or something that you frequent a lot and you add value to, why shouldn't you take some of that value and be, you know, involved more than just an investor, but, you know, as a partner? So I think it's changing the mindset about how these assets can be owned, what the interaction is with these assets. I mean, I've heard people tokenizing racehorses, which, you know, seems crazy. But, you know, it's always been a sport for kings. So why not, you know, fractionalize, tokenize these kind of assets? I think my only sort of reservation is, you know, some of crypto, some of Web3 has got a bad reputation because there are some bad actors, but there are bad actors anywhere. So I think it's a question of, like, with any project, can you verify what's being said? Can you validate? Can you compare those assets with other kinds of assets to understand, is it valued? What is the value? Is it something that's perceived to be a certain amount, or can you benchmark against other assets, similar assets? So I think that's for me, the asset itself isn't particularly important. It's important about what that asset can do for the individual. So if you love to ski, why can't you buy a fraction of a ski resort, or, you know, something that you are engaged with, empowered by, as well as what could increase in value?
That's true. So yeah, I wanted to dive into that after a little bit more about Xcavate, but yeah, I wanted to talk about you know, accessibility. You know, that's the hugest aspect of, like, you know, traditional wealth, or even just like retail, like having access to purchasing properties. Like, how do you get into that? You know, and now that's where like blockchain and Xcavate comes in, is that you give that access. So dive into more what Xcavate does and kind of the backstory.
I mean, initially we've focused quite heavily on new build real estate because it's a lot easier to validate, verify. So Alex, my co-founder's experience finding new land for a developer. So the idea of tokenizing a piece of land is you know, what we want to do in the future, and start right at the beginning. Even the idea of real-time land registry and planning certificates. You know, I think some areas of the world are still using paper, which is crazy. You know, we should be using a global system that then is regionally specific. So that's a starting point, I think, that we want to get to later. But, you know, we to bring this back to something tangible for people. In the UK, there's a lot of smaller developers. So you might get a real estate developer building a 9-block apartment. So imagine sort of 9 condos, and each condo might be a 1-bed or 2-bed apartment. And let's say they're worth $300,000, or the developer says they're worth $300,000. So the idea would be that they would go through a process of KYC, so know your customer, you know, verifying their digital identity. So part of the process that we're building is that identity stays with the individual. So they create their own identity. They then would get different credentials from different trusted entities. So you might have a government might give you a credential, or it might be from some kind of entity associated with that kind of market. So it could be a real estate association or whatever. But fundamentally, that real estate developer gets verified that they are who they say they are. And the asset itself, once the developer puts all the details into the system, that then gets validated. So that gets compared with, you know, the build certification that gets validated, the insurance document that gets validated. All these things prior to the tokenization, because tokenization of assets is relatively simple. But how do you know what that asset, what that token actually represents? So that's what we've focused quite heavily on. So once that verification has happened, once the tokenization has happened, so the first thing that happens is an NFT. So an NFT is like a unique token that represents all the attributes of that particular property, that specific condo, not the whole building. Yeah. That gets minted, then fractionalized. So the real estate developer says, I want to create 100 fractions of that particular plot of the condo. That then it gets listed on the marketplace. Investors can come along and review that particular condo versus other similar types of condos in the area. So they end up with a like a lower price range and an upper price range of similar properties in the area. And then they know where that particular property is in relation to that. They also get an understanding of the kind of rental yield that kind of condo would give them. So compared to other condos in that area. So it's giving the investor as much information to make an informed decision about that purchase. Yeah. And once they've purchased, they've got a digital asset like USDC or USDT. They then make that purchase, which is relative to how many tokens they want to buy. What they're actually doing is reserving that property token. And then once all of the tokens have been reserved, that then initiates the creation of we call it an SPV, a special purpose vehicle. In real estate investment, they're very, very common, both in the UK and US, other parts of the world. It's like a legal entity that then owns that asset. So the idea is that the asset is owned by this legal entity, that the token represents a share in that legal entity. And that way, all of the tokens have all of the ownership of that particular entity and that asset in that entity. And they make all the decisions all the key decisions about the running of that. So you really are a fractional landlord, rather than it be some weird fund that you don't know who's controlling it and what assets are in there. So we wanted to try and replicate what happens in the real world, but then lower the barrier to entry and allow anyone to access that. It's fully legally compliant and regulatory compliant. And the beauty of the Xcavate 2.0 protocol is that each region can have a specialist in that area that knows all the legal nuances and apply their own version of the legal entity, the regulations and the legalities for that region, and run that region as an operator, if you like. That could happen at state level, at sort of county level. It can be entirely modular and composable like that. They get rewarded for that. So there's fees that are generated throughout the process, and then that's why we wanted to try and decentralize it and not have like a central point of failure. So that's why, and also local entities, they have a much better understanding of what is a good investment, what kind of properties, what kind of developers they want to encourage to be tokenizing on the platform. That's the thinking behind it.
Yeah, I always enjoy the ability to democratize funding and be able to kind of to allocate it to certain investors without having any mitigation, or those decisions are made within like a protocol, blockchain. And I know that was the big reason why I wanted to contact you and get you on here.
Well, we're also building it for the future. So imagine, rather than you having to make these day-to-day decisions about, a faucet is broken or a boiler is broken and things like that, the management entity, a letting agent or whoever that's doing all those things for you would come up with some quotations, and then an AI agent would review everything, and you would train that AI agent to make your decision. Right? Do you want the lowest cost, or do you want the best quality service person delivering the response to that requirement? And also, if that management agent misbehaves, they can be slashed, or they can be voted out by the token holders. So they have full control over that property.
Interesting. Yeah, then that just makes it less. There's less human interaction, I guess, in most sense.
Well, also, if you imagine if you've got a token in one property in the UK, one property in Florida, another property in Australia, you can then manage all those assets without having to deal with the day-to-day stuff. You can just pass it over to your AI agent that will do all those decisions for you. Obviously, I think people need to get comfortable with the idea of using agents, but that is the next stage because it needs to be scalable. Also, imagine you having a fraction of your local gym or a hotel, or it could be, I don't know, it could be something completely random, an oil rig. We're talking with projects in Africa that are mining minerals. You mentioned about opals. So it could go in lots of different areas. So you could have this portfolio of different real world assets that you don't need to worry about. Your AI agent is managing all these, buying them, selling them, and all you're worried about is, what is your strategy? What do you want to get out of it? What is it going to empower you to do? Do you want to spend all your time on a ski resort or on the beach or traveling? What is what do you aspire to do in your life?
I always had that thought with vending machines and how they would essentially don't require any human interaction, that it would process the purchases and sales and call the distributor to have it to be able to restock it without, and using cryptocurrency to pay for those processes. So industry 4.0 is what it was called. Where it's like basically robots essentially, but AI agents. That makes sense. So it's like, does Xcavate have that initially involved with AI agents, or is that with like Xcavate 2.0?
We are building things out at the moment. That's probably a bit of alpha. We haven't gone live with our mainnet because we're waiting for the regulations. Because in the UK, we want to start off as being the regional operator in the UK. In the UK, because we've got the connections. We want to iron out any bugs ourselves before we then hand over the protocol to everyone else, and then they can start to create their regions and be regional operators wherever they are. That's the sort of the plan. So we're going through that stage. So we were on something called the regulatory sandbox back end of 2024. We got accepted. We went through the process of the applications for the two regulatory licenses. So there's when you bring together the real estate developers with the investors, it's that you need a license for that. And then the exchange of digital assets, you need a license for that. So we went through that process. We were told that the real estate development and investment is a longer term investment in the view of the regulators in the UK. So can we withdraw from the sandbox and then go for the full permission? So that's what we're at, that stage now of going back and going for those full permissions. So we wanted to do it ourselves to understand what that pain was like for people. And then we can advise other projects looking to take on a region around the world. I mean, Dubai is really hot for property at the moment. It would be amazing to get a regional operator out in Dubai. We've talked to people out in Australia, Indonesia, Hong Kong, and Asia. All these different. I mean, we are talking in Africa as well. Africa is Nigeria is the second most prevalent digital assets region in the world, with the sixth largest population. So that is going to be an explosive area. And they've got huge issues with trust in the region. So having a system whereby, an out-of-the-box land registry system that then you can trust the rule of law around property, and then starting to fractionalize that property to make it a lower barrier to entry is it could completely empower that region and transform it. So I think that's a huge opportunity that we want to explore, but we need to do it in stages. So it's about sort of getting to grips with what we've built and the network we have already in the UK, and then reaching out to other partners across the world.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, like Nigeria has a lot of geopolitic kind of frustration. Can't trust the government. And I was thinking when you mentioned that, like LATAM, like Latin America, like Venezuela, 𝗏𝗏𝗃, there's a lot of conflict there. So I would see a lot of operators wanting to, develop out there. I know the land was actually pretty cheap out in Latam. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see like some of these operators. And I know you guys, of course, I would assume you guys already went through all the processes of utilizing the technology with Xcavate, and how that works. But yeah, when it comes to like kind of your Xcavate 2.0, I know there's a mention of the real X market.
Yeah, so the real X market provisionally is the real estate, but it could be applied to any real world asset.
Okay.
But we are actually looking at a project in Africa where it's a solar powered refrigeration system, but networked together to creating a cashless marketplace, like a sort of a destination point, because there's a big problem with perishable goods out in sub-Saharan Africa. So having this sort of modular framework, out of the box micro business, and then they've got a big issue with identity. So there's a digital identity piece, and then there's an education piece. So imagine, to create your own micro business, you go through a series of these micro learning modules that can all be assessed using an AI agent that creates like a verifiable quiz. So each participant goes through the learning module, takes a test at the end of it. All of those are verified, and then an NFT is supplied. Once they get through the modules, if they've got the right level of score, then they can apply for the funding for these micro businesses. So it's sort of putting all these things together, but then ongoing. Imagine tokenizing and fractionalizing all of these micro businesses to then scale those sort of things out. Because you've got 500 million Africans don't have access to power. So imagine all of these solar paneled, they're doing lots of different things. You could have hot desking, networking, businesses going to these destinations. You've got food there, you've got medication, you've got all these different things in remote areas that the big cities have got, but they require it on a much broader scale in much more rural areas, suburbs, and in areas that really don't get the investment normally. But this could offer this very trustless environment with digital assets that is quite an attractive proposition for investors, because the income relating to these micro business, if they're all cashless digital assets, they can be paid straight out of the income rather than have to wait for all this stuff and use third parties. So it's a really exciting proposition, but we're in the early stages. I think people need to get used to the idea of tokenizing an asset. What does that actually mean? What does it look like? How do I secure those assets? What is a wallet? How do I back that wallet up? We're working with a project. They're using something called garbled circuits. Now, garbled circuit is a way of creating a verifiable keypad. So the eyes can decipher information on your mobile phone that only you can decipher. Do you know what I mean? It's got to be a human. It can't be some kind of bot. So, and the keypad changes, the area of where the numbers changes. So it creates this really secure way of enabling you to keep your assets safe, but it also creates a backup. They're actually launching on Polkadot that you could, you could actually back up your assets or your wallet through a secondary device or a third device using the Polkadot network. I don't know if you know about Schmier's secret, where you can divide up your keys, and you only need 3 or 5 to bring back a device or a wallet. It's using that kind of technology. I know that's quite technical, and maybe some of your listeners aren't so technical, but it's the next level, because all of these things have been friction points with digital assets. And people trying to navigate a wallet can be a bit clunky and a horrendous experience. So having like your mobile phone as your cold storage wallet is a much more user-friendly way of going about it. So we're trying to go down that route where reduce these friction points, make it much more user-friendly, even reduce the terminology and try and make it about what do you want to do with your assets, and what is an asset? Because at the end of the day, if it's not yield bearing, it's not really an asset. Your property that you live in, unless you're renting rooms out, that's not really an asset because it's costing you money to live there. But that's a choice, isn't it? At the end of the day, you're getting something out of it. So I'm not suggesting that everyone, rents their room out, but I think that's what we're trying to deliver with Xcavate 2.0. It's this idea that Maslow's hierarchy, it starts off with things like physiological needs like food and water, housing, that kind of thing. And then it moves on to sort of the idea of self-actualization is buying assets, getting benefit from those assets, and then potentially helping others in a community. So it's about, and I don't think that's necessarily a way of, it's not linear. You don't necessarily start with, because you might have loads of assets and then not feel safe in your environment because of those assets. If you've got a nice watch on, then you suddenly become a target. So it's about trying to think through all of those kinds of real world problems and put systems in place that empower people to live the best life they can.
Yeah, I mean, that's you touch on a lot, and that's
it's a lot to take in.
It's a lot, but no, I want to, first starting with Africa. I know a lot of Nigerian individuals have been very active online, and they're very very knowledgeable. They're very hungry to utilize blockchain. I know there's at least 3 out of 4 people, I believe, in Nigeria use blockchain like day-to-day transactions. It's inevitable, and it makes sense for them to have that huge unlock. But it's interesting you're having some learning process, because a lot of these digital wallets are confusing, or you could lose your key, or you could lose your login, and how do they have access? Electricity. The internet's more prevalent than electricity, but internet's still it's fragmented, and access to assets in general, because if they can't use any day-to-day transaction banking, there's a lot of fragmentation when it comes to this region. But it sounds very promising. Having the ability to kind of gargle their accessibility to give some type of security measures, but the 3 to 5 it reminds me of a multi-sig kind of thing. 3 out of 5.
You could do that as well. So you could have friends and family with different devices. You could set parameters if you wanted, a spend limit. So if you wanted to say, I don't know, if it's over $10,000, you need 2 other people to sign that transaction. So it stops this wrench attack type thing where people have gun to your head, saying, right, okay, transfer all your crypto over to my wallet. Stops all that thing, those kinds of things, because you physically couldn't do it because you'd need all these other things in place. It wouldn't be a nice experience, but
no, I'm would they just kill you anyways? I don't know.
Well,
I mean, they're we're not getting money if you don't have the code. I don't know.
No, we don't want that to happen, but it's trying to think those things through. I mean, what is interesting from the education piece is that we're developing something called RealX Education, and the idea is that it empowers university students to deliver learning modules to schools. So I think so you imagine a content creator creates a learning module. What is blockchain? So it's a series of slides, quite an interactive session. So one of our team actually has done that, and it was funded by the Polkadot Treasury, and he's delivered these into schools. But he was thinking, well, how do we scale this? So we developed this RealX Education piece that a content creator would upload all of the content into the platform. Then the sponsor, once that's been verified that it's suitable content for kids and doesn't contravene any copyright laws, it then becomes available to sponsor. Then maybe a corporate that wants to do some CSR, community responsibility, they would sponsor that. Then maybe a school would go in and they would book that learning module. And a university student that has a credential to deliver that module, they would claim it and then physically go into the classroom and deliver that module. And then there would be this impact quiz at the end of it to understand the learning, how well they've delivered it, how well the recipients have understood the learning module. So, and then you could do a series of these learning modules to unlock rewards, and all of these recipients could have their own wallet, their own learning, be in control of all of those assets. And then companies can see how well the university students have delivered these modules and then offer them a placement or some kind of job. So I think all of it sort of ties in with this self-actualization, empowering individuals to be the best they can, because these are all interoperable elements of the system.
So the quizzes, so from the time they give the lecture, or the material to the quiz is done on the platform?
Yeah. And it'll be like an AI agent that creates a personalized quiz. So each recipient gets their own quiz and it's timed. So you can't game it, and the deliverer can't game it, because the scores are then aggregated and then the deliverer gets paid according to the score. So if they get 80%, they get 80% of the sponsor money. So there's a gamified reward system there.
Okay. And then the sponsor, what's the benefit of the sponsor? They become
so they get a branding in front of all of the recipients. So imagine the What is Money module, which is one of the ones. Imagine, I know, you got a Coinbase or a USDT, a Tether. They want to get into people to understand the difference between digital assets and traditional fiat. They've got a vested interest in sponsoring these kind of modules.
That makes sense. Yeah. Okay. So, and then, like you said, like the talents could be scouted to like a college or become a
absolutely. There's a big complaint from corporates, especially about university graduates coming out of university but not having any real world experience. Imagine delivering these learning modules to a bunch of kids over and over again. You can see exactly how well they've done. You can track their progress, the kind of learning modules that they've delivered. If they're a computer science student, if they can't deliver computer science subjects, are they the kind of recruit that you want to take on? So it can help make these decisions more tangible.
Okay. Yeah, I love that. That's fantastic. That's a way to scale education in a way to democratize the funding and actually see the potential. So you can like see, this particular teacher has a certain credential that you, from the time they started, offering these lectures to them becoming a professor with tenure at a college, university. Yeah, that's huge. I love that.
There's also like a big problem. I've got two teenage kids, so hence I'm losing my hair. One of my kids said to me the other day, "Why am I learning about algebra and stuff like that? I'm never going to use that in the real world." But yet, he's not taught about money. He's not taught about mortgages, other real world information. So imagine, these kids, university students, going into schools teaching 14 to 17-year-olds about stuff that's really, really useful. That really is a way forward, isn't it?
Yeah. I always get back to that, like learning, mortgages and the principle and everything that has to do with purchasing real estate. And it's like none of this is taught. None of it. Got to get a loan, and who do I talk to? And is my first loan? Is this should I get my house inspected? Is there issues with the housing? If there's liens or some type of
what about What about rewiring a plug and things like that?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, there's
there are limitations whether I'd want my son or daughter to go into sort of wiring stuff up, but with just understanding what goes on, so they can realize, okay, it's not like this theoretical thing. You've got this tangible real world experience that is going to put them in good stead when they leave their schools and whatever they go on to. Because I think education system is brilliant. It sets them up for more education, but not necessarily for the real world.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I want to spend this last 10 minutes before we get into community questions on Polkadot. I know this is my last 7 years of my life. I've been a part of the Polkadot ecosystem, but I'm a huge fan of Gavin Wood, and he did talk about how you kind of went down that rabbit hole of Ethereum and Polkadot. So why Polkadot, and how does Xcavate benefit from the Polkadot ecosystem or chain?
So great questions. So if we could have gone down the route of smart contracts, which would have been a lot easier, quicker, and a lot less money. But we always wanted to do something that was massively scalable. So the idea of Polkadot is its scalability and the affordability. You could easily do millions of transactions at such a low rate. And some people might argue, okay, you can do that on Solana and other various other. You cannot, in my opinion, do the level of complexity of logic that we've built, and the modular approach with the palettes of code, easily on other networks. And I think that's the big difference. We've already seen networks fall over when there's been high throughput of creation of meme coins and things like that. So Polkadot has ticked over really, really well, despite the things being thrown at it. It doesn't get the sort of recognition it deserves because from an investment perspective, the DOT token, it's only really gone one way. But I think they've struggled with the tokenomics, going from when you went through candle auctions to get a parachain. That was a really good use case for the DOT token. And then when that stopped and core time came along, it lost its way a little bit. But the fundamentals, in terms of building on the technology, it's a little bit more challenging than other networks and building with smart contracts. But the payoff is, how it would be scalable, the future-proof elements, and what's happening with Jam is a really attractive proposition for us.
Yeah, I always think of Jam as like it's like Silicon Valley. They have like the toaster or whatever the device they had on the show was. It's kind of similar, like a server per se. Like, but yeah, I've always thought of Polkadot as a way to kind of open all the doors to anybody that wants to build literally anything, if it's like an application or a decentralized application. And that's where like the Jam, like RISC-V comes in, where it's like kind of like broad spectrum of compatibility. And like I don't know how far along they are. I've kind of taken some time off from Polkadot, but I've always kept an eye on things. So like where does it come with like Xcavate 2.0, and like, are you guys purchasing core time? Are you guys, are parachain? How's that work?
We've been purchasing core time for around about 8 months on Polkadot, and there's a testnet called 𝗲𝗄𝗃, which is basically a clone of Polkadot. So we've been utilizing that. We have, when we first, core time was relatively new last year, beginning of last year. So we did partner with 𝗘𝘀𝘁𝗁. 𝗘𝘀𝘁 were a project on Polkadot. They've now sort of moved in more of a sort of an isolated solo chain or solo network. So we're still very much being helped by Tansy. So our sort of development journey has been Tansy testnet, Passio testnet, and then now launched on Polkadot. So we haven't launched our mainnet yet on Polkadot. So that's going to be in the coming weeks, maybe a couple of months at most. So we're just running through that at the moment and just doing some final. I think February is when we're just going to be doing some final testing. Realistically, March will be launch of our mainnet. In terms of like, there's been a lot of within our community, bit of a frustration about our delay on TGE. But I don't know if you're aware, but with any token, you need a no action letter from FINMA in Europe, because we're going to be creating a Swiss-based not-for-profit foundation. We need that no action letter prior to doing TGE. So all of these things are in place. They just take a bit of time and obviously money. So yeah, there's been a few delays, but we're getting there. We are certainly getting there. But I do have the utmost respect for Gavin Wood. There's been a bit of a reset in the Polkadot environment. They are building some pretty amazing apps that's going to be coming up. So the sort of parity team behind the original build of Polkadot are actually building applications themselves. So there's a bit of alignment in terms of what Xcavate are doing and what they're doing, but I don't think it's not competition. It's a really good environment as far as I'm concerned. It's a little bit challenging at times being a project developing on Polkadot. But fundamentally, the best projects will, see out the bad weather, as it were, and be successful over time. So we don't want to go in fully hyped up. We want to be realistic project, organically grow, and then build the community over time. I think it's not going to be for everyone, but that's who we are. That's what we're about. So it'll be tangible products delivering tangible results, and then building value in the network over time.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a big fan of kind of diversifying those projects, because a lot of them are kind of the same, smart contract platforms. They all kind of got eaten up by Polkadot's decision to move into VM, and using Ink, before that. So I know they're doing the Polkadot VM use cases. Like, are those being implemented into Xcavate, or is it
so we'll be fully compatible. So anything that's built on the Polkadot hub, as in smart contracts,
right?
So you can go in and write Solidity code, but there is a little bit of work to be done to then scale that out and be optimized. So there's you've got a pure Solidity version, then you've got like a hybrid version between sort of Solidity and Rust, and then you can then go into a full parachain. So that's sort of the development route, I think, Parity are trying to encourage. And what we want to do is we'll reach out to any projects that want to interact with us. So their smart contract can interact with the various different assets and call into the palettes that we're creating. And if they want to clone a palette and utilize, it'll be open source software. So there'll be opportunity for, we want to build stuff and say, in our minds, this is a good application, but if you can make it better, build on it. Or if you can make a better application, then build your own. And then we'll try and, build ours out and we'll develop together, and we'll be, it can improve things. I think in other ecosystems where you've got control over software and everything's quite combative, it can stifle innovation, and we don't want to do that. That was the whole point of Web3 in the beginning, is that, we want to share best practice. We've been really beneficial. Polkadot has helped us with like delivering the core time and also other nodes, so in the network. So we've been supported by that. We've also gone through an external code audit, which has been partially supported by the grant application system in Polkadot. So it's all those sort of things. We recognize it's not perfect, but they have really, really helped us. And the teams there, there's some amazing guys. You know, they are literally rocket scientists. You know, I would say I'm enthusiastic. You know, and I've sort of I've battled with some of the stuff, and I've just persevered to get the level of knowledge we've needed. And some of all of my team are way more intelligent than I am, which is I think how it should be. You should be the least intelligent person in the room, in my opinion. But the guys from Polkadot are just, you know, another level, which is great. So yeah, I've got a lot of time, and I think a lot of time for them, and I think the future is very bright. I think the rest of the ecosystem will understand it once they see projects maturing, and the kinds of projects that are coming through are definitely doing that at the moment.
Yeah. So what I was going to ask, like, what is your, I guess, top 5 projects you're excited about building a Polkadot?
I think mythical games is an obvious one. So if you're a really, you know, heavy gamer, the idea of having this ecosystem of decentralized games that you could own your assets and port those assets between games is a really attractive proposition. And they're, you know, you're talking about John Linden, who's one of the OGs from gaming. I'm lucky enough to met him a couple of times, and he's a really cool guy, a nice guy, and that's a fantastic project. 𝗥𝗲𝗺, they're a partner of ours. So they've got like 160,000 mobile devices that are a part of their network that are now, you know, creating mobile compute. So you can write a script, it can execute within this network. They then get rewarded with various tokens, and it's completely secure within the T environment, the trusted execution environment of a mobile device. So we're going to be utilizing those when if we look at like off-chain data, things like, you know, other real-world assets, comparison of prices with assets, those kinds of things. And you know, it's going to be, we're going to also utilize it for execution of AI agents as well. That could be another use case. So, and then there's Mandala chain. That's a pretty cool one that's coming up. So they're trying to bring on board, you know, 100 million users within the Indonesian region, which is like thousands of islands. So there's all these sort of, it's a completely decentralized environment, and it's actually sort of trying to make them networked, which would be really cool. So there's lots of things we can work with that project. There's also the Hyperbridge project. We're partnering with them, so they can bridge trustlessly with other networks. So we recently brought over USDT from Ethereum over to the Xcavate chain. They're already networked with other projects and the Polkadot hub, but we wanted to try and test out, because we are partnering with, there's a stablecoin provider in the UK, which is the first regulated stablecoin. So it's backed by Sterling GBP. And we're just in the process of bringing that over from Ethereum over to Xcavate. So all of this stuff is all happening at the moment. And there's loads of projects that I haven't gone into, but yeah, I think if you're interested, just explore, you know, go through the Polkadot website. It's very minimalist and a little bit easier to navigate. So yeah, get involved with that, and reach out, have a look at our Xcavate 2.0 white paper, and reach out to us on you know, some of the socials. I don't know if we're up on our time at the moment, or
yeah, if you have a hard stop, then we can take off here. But I was going to get into community questions.
No, I can stick around for a little bit longer. That'd be cool.
Okay, yeah, like 5-10 minutes. And yeah, I just wanted to add to that. So yeah, Polkadot, well, the substrate framework is quite highly sought out, and actually, like Charles Hoskinson was using it for Midnight. 𝗲𝗄 is using it for like a Polygon kind of spin-off. It was like one of the co-founders. And Liberland, which is a citizenship that they're building between Czechoslovakia, I think, or Czech and Siberia, I believe, Serbia. They have like a piece of land that they're trying to build on. I guess they kind of built a property on, or built a physical structure recently. So that's like they're using substrate but essentially Polkadot to create a blockchain, spin it up, and then like create as like a governance token as their actual government. So
Nice.
their stable coin. So but yeah, you mentioned like Mandala. I really like what Mandala's doing. Mythical, I aligned with Mythical since 2018. Like I've been a huge fan. Blanco's huge, big holder of them, of that project. 𝗲𝗵𝗃𝗁, the game, and NFL Rivals, FIFA Rivals, Nitro Kart. All their games. Yeah, it's gonna be aligned. I'm excited about Pulse Market. They're coming out with their marketplace is now different. So yeah, I'm excited.
Hydration. I never mentioned hydration. So you've got this
Hydration.
really
Yeah, that's
cool
the fifth one.
decentralized exchange.
That's huge. Yeah.
We'll be looking to utilize hydration in the future. So, we
sense.
can put a pair in of maybe Xcav token and a stable coin. It's really easy to spin up. So it's all those sort of things that we honor on our sort of roadmap and milestone pathway. Sorry, I've got a mad dog in the background.
No worries. I guess kind of an alpha cheat code for anyone that wants to, especially you. If you do pair your token as a 1-to-1 on hydration, it shows up on Dex Screener, and then you can pay for the information for Dex Screener to become more seen. So you become more visible. The only other project is Wood, so you have no competition. Yeah, definitely. I would suggest that. Mythical hasn't done it yet, so there's only a handful of tokens around there. So Wood, Myth, and all the pairings with hydration. But yeah, they show up and populate on the Dex Screener. So it'll be good to see you.
There's another big one, Project Liberty. Have you heard about that?
Yes, Project Liberty. What is it? What's that? 𝗲𝗍𝗶 is the social media platform they're using. It starts with an F, I think. Yeah, Project Liberty. But essentially
they're trying to decentralize social media and make it a lot more user friendly, should we say, and less toxic. I mean, I've got, as I said, 2 teenage kids, and some of the stuff on social media is pretty horrendous. And I think there could be more done, but the algorithms are there to encourage more use and keep users on those devices. And if it was good content, I would say it's not a problem. But I know from experience that they're exposed to some pretty horrendous stuff, and there's just massive abuse of scams and other things happening that is not moderated. And so I think if it's part of the design of the platform, and then there's also a crypto economic way of incentivizing creators and participants to be responsible, I think that's a better route forward. But it's got to be enjoyable experience. Kids won't join these kinds of things, and people in general won't join unless it's a good experience. So yeah, I'm interested to see what happens. But
yeah, I've always been excited about their project. I know the developer, or one of the backers, I believe, he was going to purchase TikTok at some point. Yeah, so TikTok was going to be decentralized possibly. So I know that the 𝗲𝗍 platform, no one really uses it that I've seen significantly, but we could see something like that. And actually, I might be interested in utilizing that because I plan on creating a kind of social media platform for graded coins. So it's kind of intro, but that would be interesting to use, kind of like a kind of standard. I know it was like DNSP or something like that, decentralized service protocol. I don't remember, but they have some acronym. But yeah, I that's a really good project. No one talks about it a lot. it's been kind of on the wayside. But yeah, I would say, out of 5 projects, your project has always been like top priority, because you've been like, RWA real estate, like no one else is doing that really. Kind of, I know water protocol showed up, and like for like stocks, or for democratizing, like what was it, like
Commodities.
commodities and stuff like that. So I don't know what happened to water protocol. They're still somewhere. I think
I actually messaged the lady who's Miriam, I think it is, the other day, because the stuff that we're doing with Africa, there could be a potential partnership. So I think she's, they're still around.
Okay, good.
Yeah, not quite in the Polkadot ecosystem.
Yeah, I felt that. But I mean, yeah, they had a good, analogy what they were trying to build. Like, I like the thought around, like, accessibility. That's what you're saying. But yeah, let's get in the comments. I know we're here at the hour. I got some comments here. Let's see. We got a bunch of them. That's Matthew.
I'm glad I've not bored everyone to death. So that's good.
Yeah, there's a ton. There's a bunch of people on correct, because Africa, Nigeria. So this is Matthew Raji. Correct. The biggest in Africa, but for Nigeria, the best entry is to understand how operators here work, and it would be help them and enhance once the values communicated and market's yours. Talking about power, this is something I'm interested in.
Nice. Okay.
Wow, there's quite a bit of people on LinkedIn that said stuff. Shows there's no overnight experts. Okay. All right. All right, let's jump in. Okay, this is an interesting one. What milestones matter most for Xcavate in the next 12 to 24 months?
That's a great question. I think the biggest milestone has got to be the regulation, because it will unlock so much. I mean, the regulators in the UK are quite challenging, and it's easy to say, oh, they're being combative or they're being awkward. I think you've got to look at it from their perspective. There's been so much, there's so many problems, so many projects that have been scams and rug pulls and things like that. So regulators are coming, in my opinion, from a position of wanting to do the best by investors, but they've also got a position of protecting the status quo with the marketplace. So, what we've done is gone in and tried to be collaborative and get them to understand what we're trying to achieve with the project. But yeah, they don't fully, in my opinion, they don't fully understand the digital asset space, because it's moving at such a rapid pace. So it's about understanding that they move at a much different pace to us, and we need to get them on board, unlock the UK first, and then there's already talk about like a passport system. If you get regulated in the UK, then you wouldn't necessarily need the same regulation scrutiny in the US, which would be amazing, because we'd love to explore the US, but also other geographic locations. Dubai, huge opportunity. Real estate is shooting up in Dubai, and there's lots of people are going there. They're attracting a lot of wealth and an opportunity. So that would be a really quick and easy win. Asia, for me, is a huge opportunity. So both Hong Kong and then the wider Asian region. And as I said, doing something in Africa from a personal perspective. When I was a kid, we spent some time in Africa, and I would love to go back at some point and to do something that I feel would leave some kind of legacy. Would be an amazing achievement. So I know that's a lot to unpack in terms of 12 to 24 months, but I think it's all doable. But I would say the number one thing at the moment is regulation for the real world assets. And then the other big thing is the RELX education. Getting a couple of pilot schemes with universities off the ground would be the next big thing for me.
Yeah, a lot of the regulatory hurdles is going to be the biggest dynamic. But yeah, I mean, we're at this position in the world now that people are recognizing blockchain as a real use case rather than separating like the crypto kind of financial aspects.
I think stable coins have worked really well.
Yeah,
I know, the
that's true.
hardliners in Web3 crypto don't necessarily think that stable coins are different from banks, but I would argue against that. I think there is a difference, and it does disrupt the market and give more control over to the individual.
So do you feel that stable coins are beneficiary, or are they, do they stifle some, I know there's accessibility and stuff like that, but when it comes to like kind of like control, like the fact that USD, Tether can just mint, more tokens, or
Yeah, I'm not
other than
saying it's
just
perfect. I think it's a good entry point for the average person to
yeah,
firstly to understand in terms of tokenization, but
true,
also to get comfortable with I can on and off ramp this asset relatively easy because
yeah,
there's no slippage. You go and buy, a bit of Bitcoin or Ethereum or DOT, and you're subject to huge fluctuations in price. It can be daunting. And there's so many stories about losing your shirt over buying crypto. And it's a lot of the
yeah,
time it's education, timing, all these different
true.
aspects.
Yeah, I mean that's true, and I've seen something where it's basically most accessibility is going to end up becoming just like stable coins essentially. Because how I ended up getting into was Bitcoin or using Coinbase, and then yeah, like XRP, Ethereum, just kind of buying whatever, and not knowing what it is really, just seeing that there's different cryptos, but there was only so many. Now that there's just a vast amount of crypto being produced every second. Um, but yeah, I see stable coins. It's not going to stop. There's going to be a flavor of stable coins, but I'd like to see more, yeah, regulatory clarity, which is the Clarity Act. I believe that's the name, right? Um, that we're going to see like other countries, like you mentioned, UK and Australia is going to be, there's more regulatory framework around that. Like now you can have secure stable coins from different countries and regions now that more than ever. So that's going to be a huge unlock. Um, and then, yeah, so let's see, what else do we have here? We've got a few more questions before we take on. I don't know if you have a dead stop here, but appreciate you the extra time you have. Let's see, fractionalization. How does fractional ownership on Xcavate work at a high level?
Okay, so imagine the asset. Let's take a condo as an example. The asset gets divided up into 100 fractions, and each fraction represents 1% of the asset. So both the asset equity in terms of the ownership of the actual item itself, each percentage calculated together would be 100%. But then the yield, the income relating to that asset, you would get 1% of that yield. So there's a direct correlation between the ownership of the asset and any yield. But also, to make it fair and balanced, any costs associated with that asset, you would then be responsible for. So with our particular example, because they're new builds, everything's guaranteed, including the utility of the devices and things like that within the condo, and especially things like the roof and anything happens if there was a fire and whatnot. In the UK, it's actually mandatory that you have insurance, so all of that would be covered within the protocol. As part of the sort of the governance elements. But yeah, it's an interesting point. How does that fractionalization work? But it's basic, very simplistically, 100 fractions each equal 1% per fraction, both the asset and any revenue.
That makes sense. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. 𝗬𝗲𝗺𝗁𝗃. All right, we got one more question for you. I mean, I got other questions, but we'll just keep it short. How does tokenization improve liquidity versus REITs or private funds?
Okay, so I think the way that I would come at this is fractionalization of a particular asset gives you more control over understanding what that asset is in the first place, and then the decisions around the control of that asset. But what you could do is you could create a REIT from lots of fractions of different assets, and that's, going forward, we want to encourage that. So there would be projects looking to do that with lots of different, a bag of tokens of different assets. I don't necessarily think there's a difference in liquidity, because a REIT, you put a bag of assets into and then tokenize that whole bag, and then the difference would be, is that bag, the demand for that kind of bag more than the individual asset? So it depends, I suppose, what the asset is and where it is and the kind of demand. Everything boils down to supply and demand. What is that asset? I mean, the kind of assets that my co-founder, the developers in the UK have, they're very close to transport links. They're maybe 45 minutes from London. So these kinds of different aspects make them very investable. They're not in like some 300 or 400 unit apartment, build in an area where, if you sell your asset, someone else wants to sell theirs, and there's huge, supply and no demand. That's been a big problem with other projects. That's what we're trying to avoid happening with Xcavate. I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. The accessibility. So, and also,
Well, actually, sorry. One thing that we are doing is we want to create a buyback option with the protocol. So it creates liquidity
makes
that
sense.
if they list their property token on the secondary market and they don't get any buyers in the time frame they want, there's a buyback option with the protocol that then relists that token, and then the protocol would make 1% or whatever, because it wouldn't be timed. So we're not looking to make a huge uplift in fees, but it will be about giving people liquidity in that secondary market.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask that question. Like, what if they wanted to sell it back? So there's going to be a marketplace for that. That makes sense. Yeah. So,
but we have got a number of investors already in the project that would be keen to do some kind of liquidity pool as a buyback. So it wouldn't be reliant solely on the protocol, because the generation of fees may not be enough to provide liquidity for all of the tokens. So it will be about coming up with new interesting ways of providing that liquidity. But but if we're doing lots of things with the protocol, not just real world assets, there should be diversification and fees coming into the protocol that can be used for that liquidity going forward.
Okay. So like, yeah, I mean, it incentivizes them to keep those assets, closer to the, I guess, the original developers or people interested in that property.
I mean, the big thing for people that I've spoken to is, how do we get in? So how do we, make that decision that this is the right investment for me? And then how do we get out? The most important thing is get in and get out. If those things aren't clear and easy to do, I think we're going to have a lot of friction points, and other projects that haven't focused on those two areas have struggled.
Yeah, exactly. It's always the exit strategy. Like, how do you exit of anything? I mean, that's any business really. Like, what's the exit? You have to think about those, and like, what do you invest into? It has to be proportionate to your investment. Hopefully, that you make a good percentage out of it. And if there's some type of long-term investment, that there's a way to exit in some fashion. So, yeah, I mean.
My hope is that people use the fractionalization and tokenization of the real estate to do what they want themselves. So if they're 18 to 35, they're probably thinking about wanting their own place. So how do they leverage these assets to then buy their, and most of the time, the rich people out there, they take an asset, they borrow against that asset, they never actually sell that asset. So I think that's where we want to try and get to, and partner with other sort of liquidity pools and exchanges and ways of creating added value and amplifying the asset value.
Yeah, I mean that would make most sense. Like create a DeFi integration where you can trade these assets or stake them, or liquidity pool, some type of incentivization where longer locking periods or something like that, like outside of just like the fractionalization. So that to me is like a way to build actual scalable platforms, like keeping the tokens in the ecosystem, or utilizing it so people are not just like having a banking crisis, like everyone wants to exit, So yeah, we've thought about that too with our platform we want to build is, how do we keep them in? How do we incentivize them? What's the long-term reasoning? If this is going to be short-term investment or long-term investment, or we want to capture, the whales, I guess, per se, for them to invest in our project. So,
well, gold is always a hedge, isn't it, in difficult times?
Yeah.
And you've seen the price of gold go crazy in the recent last year or two.
Yeah, I've noticed with at least we'll talk a little bit about precious metals here, but that with the numismatic graded coins, they're reaching the level of the price of melt, so it's like people are actually just purchasing it almost at melt prices. So it's become not necessarily not as interesting, but like the prices are pretty similar when it comes to like the pricing of like a graded coin. So I've been selling the 5-ounce silver coins. They're in like the $600 to $700 range, but like the value of gold and silver is like $500 to $600. So it's like it's almost reaching that kind of momentum where people are interested in just buying the bullion per se, rather than just buying a graded coin. But like, of course, you can't really, you know, it's different when it comes to like foreign coins, or like historical coins, or fractional coins from certain regions, like those are specific. But like when it comes to bullion, it's like now we're like getting to the point where this gold is more interesting as a bullion than a coin. So um but of course that's going to change once everything kind of stabilizes. But it's the same as like any industry, I guess, to say. But yeah, bullion and the prices and precious metals just been skyrocketing. Um, I it's insane. It's up there with Pokemon cards. I invested in Pokemon cards. It's even RAM right now is like 3x on DDR5 from last
Crazy.
year.
It's gone ballistic, and
I'm
that's because
literally
of
reselling RAM.
AI.
Yeah,
It's only going to get more scarce and more challenging. So,
yeah. It's becoming a precious metal of itself. So it's funny to see like crypto markets and industry of like precious metals, and then like the accessibility to microprocessors and chips are being halted. So it's like DDR5 and GPUs, like, or not just RAM in general, but like DDR5 RAM chips are just becoming like explosion in price. Uh, yeah. So, but all markets, that kind of all leads to technology, and being able to implement on top of that layer. That's where Xcavate is. That's where I want to build stuff too, as well as blockchain use cases with like numismatics and building accessibility for people. But yeah, let's wrap it up. It's always good to catch up. I know we didn't get to personally catch up too much, but maybe we'll catch up on another one. Of course, we're gonna have you on if you would like on another panel with other real estate related RWA.
yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah,
Really
so we have some interesting people that we've had on before around RWA, so it'd be good to see you on there. Let's plug you in here. We got Richard Halsworth, 077-9866-710, Xcavate.io. Get a hold of Richard if you're interested in working with him. And definitely check out the Xcavate 2.0 white paper. Very interesting stuff. Real X markets. Looking forward to seeing that and some updates on the Xcav token, how that's going to work with democratization and working with Polkadot. Definitely one of the leaders in the space with Polkadot. I mean, no one else is doing what you're doing, so just keep at it.
Thank you.
Plug in with us. Call us 561-310-8341. Email us youneedcoins@gmail.com. Website coinandcurrency.net. eBay American CC. You can check out all our products on there as well. And yeah, any parting words for you, Richard?
Just thank you very much for having me on. It's been great to see you again, and yeah, hopefully we can meet in the physical space at some point. Yeah, just I suppose socials. If you want to follow our project, go to 𝗥𝗲𝗺𝗁𝗃.io, but also Telegram, 𝗥𝗏𝗺𝗁𝗃.io, and X is 𝗥𝗏𝗺𝘃𝗃𝗁𝗃. Yeah, please do follow us. There's lots happening over the coming months. Really exciting time for us this year. We've seemed to have sort of turned a bit of a corner, and we've got a lot of traction, a lot of interest in the project, and there's some tangible things that are happening in the next few weeks, which will be big announcements. So yeah, thanks very much for having me. Enjoyed it.
Plug this in here on the screen for everybody. Let's see here. Xcavate.io, TG Xcavate X, Xcavate official. Check out what they're building. Top project of Polkadot. If you guys forgot Polkadot, well, this is a reason not to forget Polkadot. So definitely up there with analogy for the use case for Polkadot. So yeah, let's wrap it up. Thanks for everybody for being here. Appreciate everyone. Follow us on our socials: American CC, American Coin ACC, eBay, American CC, Instagram, and TikTok and Facebook. You check us out. We're here 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific every Thursday, and we'll have Richard on for a panel in February.
Thank you so much.
So
Thanks everyone.
Thanks everyone. Have a great day.
And you. Bye.